It's Thursday, April 23rd, and time for your Barbados Today morning news update. Tourism officials are mulling over strategies to keep Barbados top of mind in its major markets with a near $30 million fund as the country continues to battle the COVID-19 pandemic. Tourism Minister Kerry Simmons made the announcement during a Facebook Live chat with President of Travel Pulse Canada, John Kirk. The minister admitted that the island, which is now under lockdown, was going through a tough period as a result of the pandemic, but he said tourism officials have taken a conscious decision to use the time to reassess the island's bread and butter industry.
First of all, there's a look at how we can reposition the Barbados brand and keep it top of mind awareness across all of the major source markets. And that type of discussion is going on, as I said, even as I speak to you in another part of this office. I would also say to you that one of the things we have done is to set aside some funds at the governmental level, I think about $20 to $30 million from the government, and then there'll be a blended finance into the private sector so as to be able to recapitalize what we call a small hotels development fund. Okay. And that small hotels fund would really be to enable a lot of the hotels to refresh themselves and to use this down period as a period during which they do some reconstruction and uplift, etc. We've created a tourism recovery task force, and as recently as yesterday, I would have had some online and meetings with the members of that task force.
The minister said the cruise sector would also get specific attention.
We are looking at the way in which we can now work with them so that when there is a recovery period, we can be at the centerpiece of that recovery. And there's some key things that we would want to do for the rest of the region, the Eastern Caribbean in particular, in that regard. And one of them is to create a summer cruise itinerary so that instead of the Mediterranean being the only place to be for major cruise activity out of Europe, we would want to think that now we can have a relook at the Southeast Caribbean and have Barbados at the centerpiece of that itinerary.
6 straight days of recording no new COVID-19 cases or deaths ended yesterday with a 70-year-old man becoming the latest person to die from the viral illness. There was also a new COVID-19 case after a 66-year-old woman tested positive out of the 64 tests conducted yesterday. Acting Chief Medical Officer Dr. Kenneth George, in an interview on CBC TV 8 last night, said the death and the new case were setbacks.
This reminds us that we need to keep our guards up. The Ministry of Health will continue to let the population know what are the issues surrounding COVID. This is indeed a setback, particularly with the death and also with the new case. And what we have intended to do with the new case is to do extreme contact tracing, both at persons in their home environment and outside the home environment, to make sure that all potential contacts are identified, and we are going to put them into two groups, symptomatic and asymptomatic, and we are going to do testing on these individuals.
With close to 1,200 tests having been conducted so far, Dr. George said authorities would be ramping up screenings and testing. He said the patients at the geriatric hospital and persons suffering from respiratory illnesses are to be tested even if they had no travel history.
We have been telling the public that we are going to increase our level of screening in the population, and therefore we have broadened the let's say the case definition for persons who meet the criteria, and therefore we're including even persons without a travel history. We're asking for persons with respiratory illness to report at clinic or their general will advise them what are the next steps. So we are broadening or testing of the population in general. And we hope to go from about 50 tests a day to scale up to as high as 500 to 600 tests a day. Because only when we have widespread testing will we be able to get a good handle of if there's in-country transmission.
In other news this Thursday, the days of indiscriminate hiring of people to work as private security personnel in Barbados will soon be over. That's according to Chairman of the Barbados-based Caribbean Association of Security Professionals, or REID, who disclosed that his organization was currently waiting on government to implement new regulations which would require all private security to be properly trained. REID, a retired senior police officer, tells Barbados Today the new measures would also pave the way for all private security workers to carry firearms.
I believe that private security officers will reach that stage when we would have every private security officer trained. As a matter of fact, not only trained but selected on the basis of set criteria. And the Caribbean Association, we have discussed this extensively. We strongly believe that there ought to be the set prerequisites for enlistment in private security. We've had the opportunity to discuss this at the highest level. We are awaiting the implementation of that request, where only persons who are trained to a maximum of 60 hours and have been successful and shown themselves to be competent should first be hired as private security officers.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To news from our regional neighbors now. Health officials in St Lucia are reporting that all 15 COVID-19 patients in the country have recovered. However, they have warned the public not to become complacent as the threat of the contagious virus still exists. We get more in this report from HTS News Force.
To date, all of the positive cases of COVID-19 in St. Lucia have recovered, with the remaining 2 cases who were in isolation receiving negative COVID-19 results and have since been discharged from the hospital. This now places St. Lucia at the 100% recovery rate of all COVID-19 cases. Among the 15 cases St. Lucia recorded were individuals who fell within the category of high risk by virtue of some of them being elderly as well as living with chronic illness. They too recovered well with no complications or needed critical care.
The CMO reiterates the importance of maintaining the strict quarantine measures like the partial curfew and social distancing to slow the in-community transmission of the COVID-19 virus.
Everyone is asked to note that as essential services are made available to the public, the guidelines for social distancing need to be adhered to at all times in the interest of the health and safety of the public. In the context of this, we all need to be reminded that the threat of COVID-19 still exists and will continue to be with us for a while.
And finally, President Donald Trump on Wednesday signed an executive order to temporarily suspend some foreigners from receiving permanent residence in the United States, saying he wanted to protect American workers and jobs during the coronavirus pandemic.
In order to protect our great American workers, I've just signed an executive order temporarily suspending immigration into the United States. This will ensure that unemployed Americans of all backgrounds will be first in line for jobs as our economy reopens. We want Americans to have the jobs. We want Americans to have the health care. We want to take care of our citizens first. We have to. It's a very powerful order. It's for 60 days. At the end of 60 days, or maybe even during 60 days, I'll extend it or not, and I'll maybe change it. I might modify it.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.